We have over $160,000 in debt alone. Debt is literally just a number. It's not a character evaluation. We're not victims in any of this. We made these choices. We weren't prepared. We were uninformed. We were blinded by the potential of a lot of money. Our current running balance of credit card debt is my husband and I are in a lot of debt, and we're finally in a season where we can start to pay that debt off a little more aggressively than just making the minimum monthly payments. The debt that I'm going to start out with is a debt that I don't have the exact specific numbers for just yet, just because we're working on refinancing a couple of things and that's going to take some time. That being said, I can estimate that we have over $100,000 worth of student loans and personal loans. And I can get into more of the why behind the personal loans, our credit card debt, which is really our priority right now. I take a sip before this.
I'm scared.
As of today, we have 6 credit cards. We're just going to name them credit card 1, credit card 2, credit card 3, etc. I'm also not going to go into the why behind this credit card debt right now. I can do that in another video. And if you're curious about it, I would love to share some of those stories.
We love to know. Oh, stop it. That's what y'all came to see. I'm not the only one.
We all have stories where hardships hit and we had to do what we could to survive.
Right.
Credit card number 1. Current balance is $7,513. Credit card number 2 is $8,912.74. Credit card number 3, the current balance is $10,229.91. Credit card 4, the balance is $10,317.05. Credit card number 5, current balance is $11,812.86. And I saved the best for last, or maybe the most tragic. Credit card number 6, current balance is $16,582.43. Our current running balance of credit card debt is $63,227. We are going all in and being extremely aggressive on how much we are paying per month. Credit card debt is very stressful. There's a lot of shame around it and it can feel really isolating. But I don't look at this number with fear anymore. If you have debt that you're afraid to face, I really encourage you to face it. Stare at it until it doesn't scare you anymore, because it's just a number. I take this debt really seriously. And my husband and I take full responsibility and accountability for every single dollar of this debt. It doesn't matter the reason that we're in it. Everybody has a story and reasons behind their debt, and we shouldn't judge. I certainly don't. So here it is, $63,000 in credit card debt, and this is where it all begins.
So she's about $63,000 in credit card debt. And I'd like to know down below, how much credit card debt are you in? And she did say something about not judging people because we don't know their situation and what they've been through. And yeah, everybody has their life circumstances and all that. I agree. But one thing about the internet, and I don't make the rules, and I'm not exempt to them either, is that when you guys share these sort of stories online, people will judge, critique, and criticize, whether we like it or not. It honestly comes with the territory of social media. With that being said, I want to go to her comment section to see what other people had to say about this debt. Okay, so I quickly want to get into some of these comments. Now it says here, as an Italian girl, I don't understand how you can spend thousands of dollars you don't have and why someone would let you have a new credit card. I genuinely don't understand how it works in America. That is, when you get a credit card and you can apply for as many credit cards as you want. It's called an application. Doesn't mean that you're going to get approved, but you can try. And when some people get approved for credit cards, they pay them off in full every month. However, there are other people who apply for a credit card, get the credit card, swipe the credit card for miscellaneous things. It could even be an emergency. However, they may not pay that credit card off every month. And what ends up happening is they end up paying interest at a astronomical rate that they agreed to pay, by the way, for the money they borrow. And one of the biggest problems is whenever people are swiping this credit card, I feel many people forget this is money they must pay back, and the credit card companies don't love you. Yes, I know that's kind of hard for a lot of y'all to understand and really grasp, because you may want to truly think they're looking out. Well, I'm here to bust your bubble. Unfortunately, they would love nothing more for people not to pay off their credit card all the way, max it out completely, not have an idea of how credit utilization works, so they can actually milk the interest off the principal amount that you borrowed. For example, if you borrowed or swiped $1,000 on that credit card, they love to get an extra $250 off of you because your interest rate is 30% or something, 25%. Why not? Not only do they get the $1,000, they get the interest, and that's how they make money. And what some people do is once they max out one credit card, they move on to another credit card. And the next thing you know, they have 8, 9, 10 of them. They just racking them up at this point, maxing them all out and making putting minimum payments on the credit cards, keeping them in a debt cycle, which is very dangerous. When this happens, you end up with minimum payments collectively that might be more than your living expenses for the month. That is a scary place to be in. And this is why it can be so dangerous for people who aren't aware of how important it is to pay off their credit cards, to stay out of the debt cycles that the banks would love to keep you in. In turn, because a lot of people end up in debt cycles and are trying to claw their way out, they have to do what? They have to work. Yes, they have to work more, work harder, longer than normal, putting in that overtime. Because when you're swiping a credit card for money you don't have, and you don't have the money to pay back, you are putting future you to work and spinning on a hamster wheel that you really don't want to get on. And this is why it's so important for people to understand this. And that's actually a great question she asked. And somebody here comments, debt is math, not a moral failing. And I couldn't agree more. Love the transparency and the planning. And I also think that whenever people share these stories, it's very brave. It takes a lot of courage to get on the internet and say you messed up. And what I genuinely hope people take away from stories like this isn't to poke fun at the person, but rather to see the mistakes and the errors that they made and not make them and repeat them in their own lives. And somebody here replies, as a European, I can't help but feel like the US is set up to put and keep y'all in debt. Because if I say it, I'll be called a conspiracy theorist. But you might have picked up on something. I can't even imagine having access to these kinds of loans, if not to purchase a home or maybe a car. And somebody here comments, no one talks about being in debt. Thank you for sharing. They don't? You must have never seen my channel. Because what?
My husband and I are paying off $63,000 in credit card debt. And a lot of people are asking, how did you get into this situation?
Yeah.
So here's what happened. Back in 2022, I quit my full-time job. I didn't have a backup plan, which was a really big mistake, but my husband was working and he was able to support us at this time. And then it all went downhill. My husband was approached by an acquaintance of ours around this time who wanted to start a business with him. He was already running what we thought was a very successful business.
Right.
And so he took us out to dinner and he told us his idea for this new business he wanted to do. He punched the calculator on his phone and he slid it over to us to show us the potential money we could make.
Right.
It seemed way too good to be true, and he made it sound like it was so easy to make this money. And no, this was not an MLM. So my husband and I took the risk. We were a fairly young, newly married couple with no credit card debt, good finances, and zero experience, and we jumped. Thus started the darkest and most challenging 18 months of our lives.
Oh no. Okay, so they went into like a business partnership with a close family friend, and this is how the credit card debt starts? Very sad. And I want to know what type of business it was. And what was the offer? Because she said it was too good to be true. And sometimes in life, y'all, if something is too good to be true, you do have to say, hold on, pump the brakes. I really hate that they were misled so early into their marriage.
My husband left his career to pursue this business. My job hunt was fruitless, and with zero income, our debt began to grow. We had to rely on credit cards just to pay for life. My husband was working 10 to 12 hours a day on this new business. I was unemployed and desperate for work. Our marriage was suffering. Our finances were suffering. I was essentially watching our life fall apart before my eyes. Nearly a year into this new business venture, being unemployed, it became clear that the business wasn't going to work. And not for lack of hard work, especially on my husband's end. My husband was contacted about a job in his previous career. Literally, a job fell into his lap, and it felt like an absolute lifeline. He took the job, and we began to slowly distance ourselves from the business. And a few months later, I was able to find full-time work. And it started to feel like we were, going to make our way out of this hole. But of course, now we had this credit card debt on top of our just normal expenses.
Yeah.
Once you're in the habit of using credit cards for everything, it's really, really hard to stop that cycle, even when you're making a consistent income. So one day my husband was like, that's it, no more credit cards. We don't use these anymore.
Right.
And we stopped using them. And, life keeps lifing. Just these last 6 months to a year, we've been dealing with things that I thought would break us as well. But now, at the end of 2025, feeling like we aren't so much in survival mode, and with my husband's current job and making more money than he ever made, we're finally able to attack this debt in a very aggressive way.
This is actually very relatable for a lot of business owners. I didn't think this was the way it was going to go. A lot of these stories, the reason why people are in credit card debt, it's bad spending habits for frivolous things, not because they're always trying to survive. But then every now and then you hear the debt stories, and there are ones like this. Two people who were trying to be in the business scene. And I think it sheds a lot of light on the path of entrepreneurship. That comes with a lot of debt for many people. You have to remember how many people fail in business. Most businesses don't even make it past the first year, or they're not profitable. And we've talked about that here on this channel. And so just think about all of those people who have run businesses or tried, that have spent money trying to be successful in their business. If it didn't work, they still spent that money, and if they used debt and credit cards, still must pay those loans and credit cards back, because the banks don't care if your business failed or not. They still want their money for all those products, any services you paid for and you put on the credit card as a business expense, doesn't matter. Meanwhile, you still have to live your life, right?
And I just want to add that we're not victims in any of this. We made these choices. We weren't prepared. We were uninformed. We were blinded by the potential of a lot of money. And then on the inside, all this shame and guilt over the position that we got ourselves into. So we had to make it look like we weren't struggling by continuing to use credit cards, because we were so ashamed of the choices we had made, the mistakes we had made, the failures that we had experienced by using our credit card and making it seem like everything was fine. We didn't want anyone to know the hole we had dug. It's embarrassing.
And this is classic things you will see people do in real life. Actually, you won't see them do it, because they'll do what she's talking about. They're not going to talk about it, because there is a lot of shame in society with having debt. And when I say shame, what I mean is that the people who are in debt feel like they're going to be judged by their peers, their families, their friend groups, anything, and frowned upon. And it's human nature to want to be accepted, to not be looked at as the outlier. But the truth is, a lot of people are in debt. Yes. And it's a very taboo topic, because people don't like to talk about money, especially with people who aren't your family or friends, which I can understand, especially like getting online to talk about this. Knowing how social media can be, y'all are cutthroat. And that's why I say I think these videos are very brave, because most people would never. That's why these stories go so viral. Who do you think is liking these videos? I'm sure the people who are liking these videos or watching these videos are in debt, and they are expressing and articulating what I think a lot of people who are in debt, who aren't on social media making these videos, feel in real time. They're just scared to be vulnerable, or maybe they just want to be private. Like, I respect either decision.
So we made a lot of mistakes, and we take full accountability and responsibility for those mistakes. I know there are other people out there who are struggling with debt, maybe not for the same reasons as us, maybe not in the same amounts as we are, but it's very isolating and very scary and very hard to deal with. I wanted other people to feel like they weren't alone in their own debt or struggles with finances, that there's other people out there going through very similar situations. And the best way to deal with shame and guilt is to just talk about it and be open and vulnerable about it. People will judge you for your debt, but it's imperative that you don't let other people's judgment keep you from moving towards your goal.
And this first comment here says, I'm always confused by people who say they are desperate for work, but grocery stores, fast food, DoorDash, and so many other choices. And the creator replied with, thank you for bringing this up. This is one part of our story that brings a lot of shame for me. I was focused on needing to get a job in my field and make the kind of money I knew I could make, that I passed up or didn't look at other opportunities. Though I did apply to grocery stores and got rejected, which is why after 4 months of contracting work in my field, I wasn't able to find another contracted job. So I applied for an immediate position with a mobile pet sitting company, because I knew I could start right away and bring in money. And that's what I'm still doing. Walking dogs, pet sitting, house visits. It's not glamorous, but it's work. Just trying to learn from my past mistakes. And doing something is better than nothing. It's better than just staying in debt. So I applaud everybody out there trying to make an honest living.
My husband and I are paying off $63,000 of credit card debt, and today I'm going to tell you exactly what we made in the month of November. This has been a highly requested video from all of you in the comments, so here we are. But before I get into the numbers, please don't compare your situation to ours. Everyone's income, expenses, lifestyle are completely different.
I'm so glad she said that. I say this so many times, and people be like saying stuff like this. How much are we spending for Christmas? What are our budgets. What can you do? How many kids do you have to feed? How much is your grocery bill? What are your student loans looking like? That is going to vary from house to house. She's spot on. Oh my gosh, thank you. I finally feel seen.
More money doesn't fix bad habits. Okay, that's out of the way. Out of respect for my husband's privacy, I won't give details about his specific career, but just know that it took him years, a lot of money, and a lot of time to get to the job that he's at, which is his dream job. Snaps for him. His base salary is $8,000 a month. He also sometimes gets bonus pay, but it's not always guaranteed, so our budget is based off of his base salary. For November, we actually budgeted $8,800 for his take-home pay, but his actual take-home pay, the amount that hit our account, was $10,024.39.
Y'all got money. Ooh. This debt gonna be easy to wipe out. Because I seen in the other comments, she didn't have any children. Now, I can't say for sure. I'm just saying it's possible. 10,000? Just him, no children. Living below your means can go a long way with 10 grand and 60,000 something dollars of debt. Oh yeah, a lot could change in a year.
And me, the girl with most millennial unglamorous job ever, dog walking and pet sitting, and I really, really love it. I make between $500 and $1,000 a month. It just depends on how much work I get.
Right.
For November, I budgeted $600 for my take-home pay. I actually ended up making $882. I also have a tiny little side hustle, and that made me $188.74. So altogether, our household brought in $11,095.13 for November.
I think that's amazing. What do y'all think? Or do y'all think the way that the cost of everything is going up so much that it's not enough? I think they could really do some damage here with their credit card debt. I got high hopes for them. I'm kind of excited now that she said this is what the income is looking like. Because with some people, like, you be like, you might need to get a better job. But because her husband is making so much money and her collectively, I think it's very possible for them. And imagine if she was to get some sort of other employment, because I know a lot of y'all are going to be like, Symone, she's not making enough money. Collectively, this is a lot. And the way I see it is, it can only go up from here. If she gets a better job, it can be wiped out even faster.
I know this may seem like a big number. It is a big number, but once you subtract bills, living expenses, debt, it disappears very quickly.
What you paying for? And she's absolutely right. And this is why the lifestyle matters. And I'm not saying they're living above their means, but you can make a lot shake with 10K.
It has taken us nearly 6 months of sticking to a budget, building better habits, and constantly adjusting things to get to this point. Nothing about this happened overnight. If you're on your own debt-free journey, I'm very proud of you, seriously.
This comment here says, I love how you said more money doesn't fix bad habits. And she's not lying. This comment here says, my partner and I also bring home around 10K, but with the rent and debt, we're struggling. Your transparency is so comforting. Thank you for sharing that. And I love to see such encouragement in the comments. People saying things like, sis, y'all are going to be out of debt in no time. Now, but what is interesting is that other people who bring in collectively about $10,000 a month are also saying, hey, I'm struggling while bringing in $10,000 because of the debt and their cost of living. Many of you may be saying, how can that be the case? The thing is, y'all, the minimum payments that you still are required to make at bare minimum for those credit cards, the loans, people have student loans, like, again, varies from house to house. Some people have none, some people have a lot. I've actually seen people that say they have $5,000 in minimum payments just for credit cards because they have so many. So essentially, even if they made $10,000, they have to live off of 5 with those minimum payments. And that doesn't knock down the principal of those credit cards. Minimum payments on a credit card, if that's all you're doing, would take you so long to get out of debt. And that's why it's so important to not make minimum payments. You really have to, throw everything you have at the credit cards as soon as you can. And everybody's situation is going to vary because you do have to consider things like emergency funds, things like that, because a lot of people will get out of debt and be right back into debt because they didn't have any emergency fund money. Little things like that. You got to do what works best for your household and for you.
Okay, this comment right here. This was the top comment on one of the first videos that I posted on my TikTok. Debt is math and not a moral failing. I agree with this. Debt is literally just a number. It's not a character evaluation. It's not a spiritual condition, and it's not a personality test. But here is the interesting part. If debt is just math, why do so many people feel shame around it?
Because as adults, we're supposed to be responsible, right? The truth is, a lot of us aren't taught financial literacy from our parents. I know a lot of y'all thought I was going to say school. No, the parents, because it starts at the house. Whoever raised you, just think about your own childhood. What conversations were being taught and had in the household about finances? How good were your parents with money? Now, most of y'all are looking back, reminiscing on your childhood, and you're like, we didn't really talk about that much. Did your parent talk to you about bills? Building credit? Did you understand how interest rates worked? Did you understand how credit utilization worked? Did you understand loans? Were you one of those people who got loans for college when you were a teenager and didn't understand how that loan was set up and how that interest over all of these years was going to affect you now in current time? Because you're no longer a kid? Did you understand how car loans worked? Did you think that the price on the car is how much you're really paying for the car? Did you understand the interest attached to that? Probably not. And my point here is no shade towards the parents. Many times these things aren't explained. You hit 18 and you're thrown to the wolves and you figure it out. You'll be lucky if you're taught this stuff in school, in economics class. Luckily for me, I took economics in high school, but guess what? It was an elective. It was not one of those classes you had to take. It was one of those classes that if you didn't have a job that you were allowed to work during the school day, during those hours, you had to pick a class. That was one of the classes you could pick. And I still had a job after school. Point is, we're expected to know a lot about this with not many people having open and honest conversations about it. And then be responsible in a topic that is foreign to a lot of people. How does that make sense? It's almost like you were set up to fail. Not intentionally, by the way, because this is no shade towards the parents. But how? Generation after generation after generation, do we keep missing this important topic in breaking it down to the youth at a younger age so this doesn't happen? Now, in her case, specifically, this may have been inevitable if she really wanted to chase the business. This is what comes with trying to be a business owner. Sometimes you're going to take a loss. That's part of the game. I'm talking about the shame that comes behind credit cards and why it happens, though. People are shamed because there is an expectation as an adult that you would not do something like this to put yourself in a bad situation. And it happens sometimes because you knew better and sometimes because you didn't. Nonetheless, debt is debt. Debt doesn't discriminate, doesn't really care why you're in debt, doesn't care what color you are, doesn't care what gender you are. The money you owe is still green at the end of the day. And people judge you based off of how successful they think you are. So if they know or think that you're in debt, some people would frown upon that, which is where the shame comes from. That's actually a great question, though. That's just my perspective. But what do I know? I don't know everything. And sometimes that's the wise thing to be able to admit. But it's okay.
Why do we tie it to our identity? Why do we immediately assume that someone in debt is irresponsible, lazy, or living beyond their means? So here's my genuine and maybe a little controversial question for all of you. Is debt neutral, or have we all collectively decided that it's a moral issue? Did society teach us that owing money makes us bad, or are we doing that to ourselves? I will say this about my situation. I had to see debt as an object and not an identity in order for me to finally see it as something that I am capable of overcoming and fixing. And maybe you're still stuck in the shame cycle and feeling like you're a bad person because of it. And I think it's time we unlearn that shame around things like this so we can actually move forward and take action. But I'd love to know what you think. Do you believe debt is morally neutral?
Well, if people weren't judged on things like credit score, credit history, those sort of things, there probably wouldn't be such a non-distinction between the actual person and the number. But in America, because I know in a lot of countries, if you just ain't got the money, you don't get to buy anything. But here, when you've shown a bad history on that credit report or you have a low credit score, there are things that are attached with that. There are things that you can't do. It doesn't make you a bad person. You just have limitations out in the economy versus somebody who has, say, a good credit score. It doesn't make them a good person either. But in the economy, they're able to do more with that. They're able to utilize the resource. that is not available to the people who have lackluster credit. But nobody is their debt. Just because you have a lot of debt doesn't make you a bad person. It doesn't make you a good person, and vice versa. If you have good credit, there are a lot of people with great credit, not the best people. So I actually see nothing wrong with saying, hey, I am not this thing that society deems as bad. No, you just have that thing and you need to get rid of it. You need to pack it up, get it down. And I believe in y'all. And if you put your mind to it, you can do it. I didn't say it was gonna be easy though. You see how I never said that? I never said it was gonna be easy. It's gonna take some work, some budgeting, some dedication, maybe some overtime, increasing of skill to increase that paycheck, some positivity, determination, but over time, I think with all those things, the future looks bright.
$63,000 of credit card debt. And the comment I received the most of is, you should declare bankruptcy. So I'm gonna throw some makeup on my face and tell you what our decision is. First things, this is not advice. I'm just sharing our personal decision. At one point, we absolutely considered bankruptcy. We were extremely overwhelmed. We have over $160,000 in debt alone. That's between credit cards, personal loans, and student loans. And truthfully, I felt hopeless for a time. But we were never behind on our payments, and our expenses were always paid. No one was coming after us, and we were never at risk of losing our home. But for a while, we were floating the debt for many months because we couldn't do anything other than pay the minimum payments on it. But now with the income that we make, we're no longer just floating the debt. And coming to that realization that we could pay this off felt really good. We knew it would be stressful, but absolutely doable. And for us personally, if we're able to pay the debt back, we feel a responsibility to do that. I also started feeling this deep conviction that wiping it clean would mean missing out on some very important lessons. The budgeting, the discipline, the mindset changes. If we didn't learn those, we could end up right back in the same situation. Even though our debt wasn't from shopping or taking vacations, I still think there are really important lessons that everyone should learn about managing money. And sometimes those lessons come from making a lot of mistakes. But everyone's situation is different. Your decision has to make sense for your life. I feel a lot of gratitude that my husband and I are in a place financially where we're able to pay this debt off very aggressively. I don't take that for granted. For us, avoiding bankruptcy is the right thing to do, and we're committed to cleaning up our own mess.
And I see nothing wrong with that. Often in the comments of people who are sharing their debt journeys, we see a bunch of just file for bankruptcy. I'm talking about it could be 20 grand. Here come the file for bankruptcy mafia. And I can understand why a lot of people's first instinct is to say, just file for the bankruptcy. There are a lot of bankruptcy videos online and people just saying, hey, I'm not going to try. I'm not going to make an effort, but I want everything wiped clean. I have nothing against people who file for bankruptcy. I just think the lesson should be learned. With some people, the lesson is learned by them paying the money that they borrowed back themselves. However, with other people, they'll file for bankruptcy. 7 years later, they're filing again. 7 years later, they're filing again. The lesson hasn't been learned. And sometimes when you don't learn from your past mistakes, you're doomed to repeat them. So I never would knock anybody like, hey, I just need to go through it. If you need to go through it to see the light at the end of the tunnel, better now than later, right? That's the way I see it. If you're going to end up in debt anyway from not learning, why not nip it in the bud now? Right now, the people who are using bankruptcy and actually using it as a clean slate and not repeating the same process that got them in the bankruptcy in the first place, I think that's wonderful. It's a blessing to be given a second chance and to have a good financial life after. But I need to know what y'all think about all this down below. Do y'all think she should go ahead and file bankruptcy, or do you think that this is a normal amount of debt? What would you be able to do with $10,000 if that's what you made every month? But we got to start making better decisions today in order to have a better future.